And we're live.
Hey everybody, welcome to the July meeting of the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission. Sorry, it took me a minute to figure out what month we're on. So we're gonna save approving last month's minutes for next time. We'll just double up on June and July at our August meeting. We did, let's see, a few of us had a productive session with some county representatives on Friday. That does offer us a way forward around some of the frustrations that I think we've all been feeling. So let's see, myself, Donna, Helen, Madeline, and B met with county representatives Friday afternoon, including the county manager, Blaine Williams, Leisure Services Director, Kim Kilpatrick, who's on this call, Stephanie, and a few other county employees, including 2 county attorneys and an assistant county manager. And so we got some clarity on some of the things that we've needed clarity on and learned some of the tools and mechanisms within county government that will be essential to our immediate term and long-term success. So while there's still some work to do to ensure that ACAC isn't overlooked within the county, and that we're putting our best foot forward on the commission side, the thing I'd encourage the county to be more mindful of at this stage is how much money we've accrued that needs to be deployed to meet our local taxpayers' expectations and those of the mayor and commission who have met all of our past budget requests. So I was reminded today, I got a budget update as we start the new fiscal year, that we have nearly $400,000 in discretionary spending just from our 2 capital accounts. And it's past time to put this money to work on behalf of Athens-Clarke County residents. So hopefully our next meeting will be in person and we can do an activity to guide our future planning around maybe identifying both spending priorities and action priorities concurrent with our task forces, which some of which are off the ground. So the things that we learned from Friday's meeting with county government that should enhance our operations and well-being. One is that the Athens-Clarke County created a manual for boards, authorities, and commissions in 2019. So Stephanie forwarded a copy of that to us Friday afternoon. And 2, that county government uses a mechanism to kind of codify and coordinate activities between an established mutual agreement between the county and commissions in particular, and that's a work plan. Examples of this I haven't seen yet of a work plan, but that will be provided by county staff, and I envision that this work could live within the strategy subcommittee that I chair that meets monthly. So that is helpful to have a mechanism that can codify and establish a mutual understanding of priorities that we set. And lastly, we also learned of new requirements of Georgia's open meetings laws, and I hope that somebody from the county will provide a brief overview of that, specifically the ways in which the open meeting laws impact our work later in the agenda. And that's listed as our next to last thing on the agenda today. So that's my notes to kick things off.
Kent has his hand up. Sorry, Kent has his hand up.
Oh, Kent.
I think you're muted, Kent.
Yeah, we can't hear you. I hear a
Oh, so you can hear me?
Yes, just now.
Okay. Lisa Pappas from our attorney's office is present in this meeting.
Oh, okay.
So she's willing to go over the Open Meetings Act, I should say. Lisa, you have to leave early though, correct?
I do. I am actually vice chair of our Keep Oconee County Beautiful Commission that meets tonight in person at 7.
Okay.
So I have to leave about 6:45.
So why don't we shift that to now?
Okay.
If we could, that would be great. Thank you, Andrew.
Sure. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I'll just jump right into it. I know Andrew had mentioned, well, first of all, hi, I'm Lisa Pappas. I am an assistant attorney with Athens-Clarke County Attorney's Office. I have been here, will be a year in August. Sherry and I were 2 of the attorneys that were present on the meeting on Friday, where we discussed kind of roles and responsibilities, the Open Meetings Act. And we're hoping that in the next couple of months, we will actually put out a training for all of our board authorities and commissions regarding Open Meetings Act, Open Records Act, really all the law behind it that you all need to know. But basically for the Open Meetings Act is that anytime there's a quorum of ACAC present, that meeting, that's considered a meeting and it has to be noticed. So whether or not you all refer to it as a regular meeting, an setting meeting, a retreat, whatever you call it, if there's a quorum of you present and you're going to be conducting or discussing business of ACAC, then that meeting has to have notice. There has to be public notice. Your staff liaison is the individual who sets that notice, make sure that it gets out in our legal organ, and make sure that the clerk of commission gets a copy of that notice. There has to be an agenda for each of those meetings, and there has to be minutes for each of those. I know Andrew had mentioned you all have set up some task force, and within the group of ACAC, if you all set up smaller subcommittees or task force or other, I don't know, whatever else you might call them, if there is a quorum of that particular subset present, that group is required to abide by the Open Meetings Act. So that group would have to have an agenda, would have to notice their meeting. The public would have to be able to be present if they so chose. You don't have to take public comment at those, but you do have to open those meetings to the public, and you would have to have minutes for those meetings. Trying to think, what are the...
So Lisa, just to illustrate, there's some confusion about this after our meeting on Friday. So again, let's give an example for a subcommittee. Let's say a subcommittee has 5 ACAC members on it. If that committee has a quorum, let's say 3 of the 5 are present, then the open meetings requirements do pertain, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I see a question in the chat. If there is a standing meeting for a subcommittee, does there have to be notice given for each meeting? Yes. Typically, all of our boards and commissions have like a regular standard meeting. They'll say we meet the first Monday of the month at 6, but there's still a separate notice that goes out prior to every meeting. So it couldn't be that we just send one notice out for the beginning of the calendar year. We actually have to notice each and every meeting. Does that answer your question?
I have a question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question around the task force or committee meetings. If we don't, how formalized do those task forces or committees have to be? What if we decided that 5 of us wanted to meet on a topic that wasn't part of I'm not exactly sure how a task force is legally defined, but if we have a meeting of 5 members that get together and we want to talk about X, does that, how specific does that task force committee have to be? If we have only 2 standing committees, but we have topics that we want to discuss as small groups, how does that?
I don't think it matters how you define them or what name you give to them. If you all break out into some kind of smaller group that you have set up that needs to discuss topics of ACAC, then my advice would be that those would be subject to the Open Meetings Act. You can't create just a smaller group to talk about ACAC topics and skirt around the Open Meetings Act.
But let me, I'm sorry, I'm pushing back on that. If we have a variety of members that volunteer to contribute to that meeting, and the members can come and go, is that quorum that quorum, is that the quorum of the entire commission? Or I don't understand how quorum relates when we have a sort of fluid understanding of a meeting. I can understand that if that if there's a quorum number of our commission getting together to talk, that I get. But if we have kind of a fluid understanding of who wants to attend a meeting to talk about X, and it's only 3 members want to talk about it, there is not a quorum of the commission, and there isn't, how does the quorum get defined under those circumstances?
So the quorum deals with who is present at the meeting, not necessarily what's discussed. So even if there is a subcommittee of 5 members and only 3 of the members want to talk about a certain issue, you still have a quorum present and you're still discussing ACAC business.
But you have to define who the official members are of of that committee.
Well, that's the other issue, is that in order for you all to the ordinance that created ACAC indicates there's 11 members and that there can be 4 non-voting members. I don't believe that the mayor and commission have given you all the authority to create task force or subcommittees that include more than those 4 non-voting members. So you can create subcommittees within your own 11 and include those. So I guess we'll say 15, 11 voting members and the 4 non-voting members, but you don't have the authority to create I'm sorry, that is so hard for me to say, task forces that don't include don't include those 15 members. If members of the public want to be present and give input, then you all can take public comment, but you don't have the authority to nominate people outside of ACAC to a task force. Does that answer part of your question? So,
I mean, it just, I guess we have maybe not always a standard number of meeting types. I mean, topics. It's just, I'm confused around a meeting topic, and of the 11 members of us, 3 decide they want to talk about it. How does that, I mean, can the 3 of us get together and talk about that topic?
My answer is going to be, it depends. Okay. Let's take task forces out of it for the moment. If we're just talking about ACAC, a quorum of ACAC is a simple majority. So you have to have 6 members of ACAC. If 6 members of you are getting together to discuss topics that are part of ACAC, so part of what the mayor and commission have charged you with about public art, a SPLOS project, an arts and community award. If 6 of you are getting together to meet about that, that is considered subject to open meetings, and you have to have notice, the agenda, and the minutes. So a meeting isn't necessarily driven by the topic, other than if you guys are getting together to talk about any kind of ACAC business. If 11 of you want to go out to dinner and you're not discussing anything about ACAC, you just want to go to dinner, then that is something that you don't notice. You don't have, you're not meeting, as you say, you're just out going to dinner and having fun. But if you are getting together to discuss topics of ACAC and there is a quorum present, then that is considered a meeting. If you have subcommittees, I think Andrew mentioned you all have like a strategy. I may have written that down. Strategy subcommittee.
Strategy and outreach.
Okay. How many people are on that strategy and outreach?
Those are 2 different committees.
Okay.
Strategy is, maybe 6, but one of those is an ex officio member.
Okay, so there's 5
right
Is the one ex officio member one of the four?
Yes.
Okay. So really, so that committee is a committee of 6. So if there were 4 of them meeting together and they were talking about any kind of topic that covers ACAC, if they were looking at an art and community award, if they were looking at a SPLOS project, any kind of public art, and they meet to discuss any of that, that would be subject to the open meetings. If the 4 of them were just meeting to hang out and not discuss ACAC, then no, they're not subject to that. So I see you're still shaking your head. So apparently I have.
Well, I mean, we have topics that come up out of the blue that maybe 4 want to get together to talk about. So that's not a quorum. We're just 4 of us are interested in talking about a topic.
If it involves ACAC, it is considered a quorum because you are basically discussing government business about what to spend government funds on. So you are subject to the Open Records or the Open Meetings Act for that. So even if you are meeting to discuss things and you don't have a formal vote, that's still a meeting. Agenda setting meetings, for instance, are still meetings. Your retreat is considered a meeting. So even if you don't call it your regular meeting, if you are discussing ACAC topics and there is a quorum of either ACAC or a particular subcommittee that's meeting, that is subject to the Open Meetings Act. Because there's got to be transparency in government. And unfortunately, you are kind of an extension of Athens-Clarke County government. You are appointed, you're appointed by the mayor and commission, you're considered appointed officers of the county government, so you're subject to all those transparency and open meetings requirements. So if you don't want to have to notice all of these subcommittee meetings and that kind of stuff, then my advice would be don't have those, or make sure that you only have, you know, 1 meeting a month or 1 meeting every quarter, or while you guys are here in the ACAC meeting, if you want to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, when you subdivide and have so many different task force and subcommittees, it does become a burden and a difficulty of keeping up with the Open Meetings Act. And again, I go back to, other than of your members, I don't know that you have the authority to nominate people outside of ACAC to smaller task forces. That is not set out within the ordinance that created ACAC. Madeline typed Beatrice, no, Madeline. So any meeting with 6 or more commissioners about ACAC topics and any formally designated committee meeting, outreach, or strategy with committee-based quorum, regardless of committee size, must be noticed by the county. Yes, sorry, my son is in the background and my dogs are playing. So if you heard something, that's what that was. So yes, anytime you have a quorum either of your entire ACAC or a quorum of one of your committees, your outreach or strategy, there has to be notice. The public has to be able to be present if they so choose. You have to do an agenda and you have to have meetings for that. Has her hand up. Yes, ma'am.
Kimberly, yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
How far in advance to the notice does the notice have to be given?
So notice for a regular meeting, I believe, has to be with 7 days. If there's, for some reason, you have like an emergency meeting, you can do notice as little as 24 hours, but only certain things qualify for emergency.
Thank you. I also wanted to say that, I mean, I've sat in forums where you had, 4 commissioners and 2 more came on and one of them had to leave. So this isn't really anything new in terms of what open meetings the Open Meetings Act is supposed to be about.
Mickey, I see your hand too.
Yeah, I just want to make sure to clarify that non-voting members do not count towards quorum. Is that correct?
Not for the meeting of ACAC's 11 members, but if your non-voting members are part of your subcommittee, then yes, I would say that they do count toward your quorum.
Okay, thank you.
And are you saying we don't have the standing to establish task forces, or that we don't have the standing to bring external members into task forces, or both?
So you definitely don't have the authority to bring external members into a task force. If you all want to break your own group down into subcommittees, that might be permissible. It's not explicitly stated in your ordinance, but that authority exists.
Well, what do our bylaws coexist with the ordinance, or does one supersede the other?
So the ordinance would supersede if there was anything conflicting in the bylaws. And unfortunately, the ordinance that created ACAC is just kind of, what's the word? It's not very specific. It's kind of more generalized and kind of leaves a lot to interpretation.
So we could rewrite our ordinance concurrent with rewriting our bylaws.
You cannot rewrite the ordinance. The mayor and commission would have to rewrite, or really would probably be in conjunction with the attorney's office rewriting the ordinance, because it's the mayor and commission who originally adopted that ordinance, and they're the ones that created ACAC.
I understand the mayor and commission would need to approve an ordinance change, but you're saying we couldn't even draft one if we wanted to.
I mean, if you felt, you could propose an amendment, and that would go before the mayor and commission, who would ultimately decide whether or not they would accept the amendment to the current ordinance.
Sounds like we'll have to do that.
Lisa, I just wanted to add the part where I know we've talked about this Open Records or Open Meetings Act. The changes to meeting in person after the emergency order expires. So all these meetings have to be held in person starting next month, should they not renew the emergency ordinance, right?
That's correct.
And then in October, the mayor and commission have asked that all of these meetings also have a live streaming component. So we'll have to factor in that to these meetings in person.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up, Stephanie. The reason that we are able to meet virtually right now is just because of the pandemic and the emergency orders that have been put in place. As of right now, Clarke County still has an emergency order that will expire July 20th, unless the mayor and commission extend that, which we don't anticipate that they will. Beginning July 21st, every board, authority, and commission will actually have to meet in person. The Open Meetings Act only allows, again, like I said, these virtual meetings in the state of emergency, which is what we were in with the pandemic. Specific members of a board, authority, or commission, if they are either out of town or sick and a meeting happens, they can join that meeting virtually, as long as there's already a quorum of members physically present for the meeting. And you can only do that twice per calendar year. So that member can only appear virtually 2 times per calendar year. And then the mayor and commission have also asked that once we start meeting in person, that by October of this year, each group needs to have the capability of live streaming their meetings. So even though you all are meeting in person, the mayor and commission still want those meetings to be live streamed. And staff will work with you all on that. There are these things called owls that the planning commission and some of the other boards and commission have been using, that have like microphones and cameras, and they can record what's going on, and then those are set and live streamed to a YouTube channel.
So even our subcommittees, strategic and outreach, have to be live streamed?
Yes, and they would have to meet in person if that emergency order is not continued.
So that also pertains to our task forces.
Yes.
So our monthly meeting, 2 standing major committees, outreach and strategy, that's 3 plus, let's say, 6 task forces, even though we're planning on more than that. So 9 meetings, all of those would have these requirements, even if they all fell within the same month.
Yes.
That sounds logistically hard to achieve.
I just had one more question, just a little specific. Let's say a subgroup has not met quorum, but is meeting with another member of a government organization. Do they then have to, about an AC topic, would they have to follow these same rules?
No, if you don't have a quorum of the subcommittee or task force, then no. So you wouldn't, adding a commissioner from another board and commissioner, if it was a commissioner from the mayor and commission, they would not constitute part of your quorum. Look like Madeline had a question in the chat. This means that hybrid is not actually an option moving forward. We need to meet fully in person. Yes, that's right. So after July 20th, all task force committees, subcommittees, ACAC would have to meet in person. And if you have a individual or a member that needs to join virtually, you must still have a quorum physically present for that person to join virtually. If you don't have a quorum physically present, you don't have quorum and the meeting has to be adjourned, and you'll have to meet again when everyone can meet, or at least a quorum can meet. And Madeline, you are correct that it's not just for convenience. If a member can't be present just because they don't want to be, they have to either be out of town or sick in order to be able to join virtually.
Do you mean that if we have a regular monthly meeting and there is not a quorum, we just have to adjourn?
Yes. You cannot discuss business of ACAC without a quorum.
Well, that's new.
That's never happened in the 5 years that I've been involved with the
Yeah, that's
commission.
definitely new. I mean, we never voted, but
Yeah, you should not be discussing ACAC business if a quorum of you are not present.
We put a good question in the chat about site visits that involve multiple members. So how would we about streaming something like that?
You're talking about having a meeting during a site visit. Now, there are some exceptions in the Open Meetings Act about site visits. I'd have to look back at it to make sure, but a lot of that is usually like if there are, if state officials were coming to visit Athens-Clarke County and there happened to be a quorum of them, their site visit is not subject to open meetings. I don't know if that is true for ACAC, so I would want to research that before I answer that question, but I'll definitely, I may write that on my to-do list and I will email you all back. But I know that there are certain exceptions about, like, you know, a meeting is not, like I said, if you all are meeting just for social reasons, not discussing ACAC. And there are a couple of other exceptions, and I will get a list of those to you.
Thank you, Lisa.
One more point of clarity, if you don't mind. If a subgroup is meeting with another person from the city about ACAC business, but that subgroup has not reached quorum, can they not meet and discuss ACAC business then?
I think I'd want to research that and get back to you as well. I don't want to give advice that's incorrect. So basically your question is, if you have a subcommittee not at quorum, but meeting with another member of either city commission or another commission, whether or not they can still discuss ACAC topics.
Like we did Friday.
Or, yeah, just county staff.
Yeah, then that was not a meeting
I
because
guess.
there was not a quorum
Yeah.
of ACAC present. That's, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question about how the best way to get all of these noticed. I think it's supposed to be, I don't know if this is in our bylaws or just in Robert's Rules of Order or something like that, but all meetings, the chair is supposed to be notified of all planned meetings, and then it should be the chair's job to work with staff to get that noticed with the agenda and stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to clarify so that we don't all start piling emails onto Tatiana.
Thank you, Madeline. Appreciate that.
I don't know if this was shared with all of the members. Andrew, I know you had talked about the resources that we emailed to Stephanie, and I think she sent them to you all. I don't know if you forward that out to everyone, but the ACCG puts out a really good Georgia Open Meetings and Records Laws manual, and I can send you all the link to that. It talks about, kind of has like the law and then some frequently asked questions about open meetings, what constitutes a meeting, what constitutes a quorum. I was trying to see if I could do a quick search about that site visit and notice, but it's about 185 pages, but it has a lot of information. If you all want a copy of that as well, I can send you the link. I might be able to just put it in the chat. 1 second. Okay, there's the link to the open meetings manual that's really helpful.
So a pragmatic question. We started deputizing task forces last month, I'm sorry, and they have started to meet and are planning to continue to meet. Logistically, how does that work now moving forward?
That those task forces would need to let staff know when they're meeting so that we can properly notice those. An agenda needs to be created and somebody needs to be keeping minutes of those meetings.
And we need a live stream too?
That does not start until October.
Okay.
But we'll have to start moving forward toward that. There are like the Planning Commission auditorium has an owl. I think the Satula room may have an owl, but there are government facilities where you all can have meetings. I think you'll have to see if those are available at the times that you want to meet, but they do have those, the owls and some of the other I want to call it infrastructure, but the things that you will need in order to be able to live stream.
Once it's October and the live stream requirements are in place, how do we manage doing this at a designated time and place to be live streamed?
What do you mean?
Or is there not with the owl? Like, we're gonna have to go somewhere to have a meeting with the live stream capability, I assume. But what if the meeting is Thursday at 7 and there is no government building with this capability open Thursday at 7 p.m.? Then what do we do?
I am not sure. The live stream is not a requirement of the Open Meetings Act. This is just something that the mayor and commission want. So I think you all would probably have to work with the manager's office to see if the mayor and commission would allow some exceptions.
I'll jump in real quick too, Lisa.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kent.
We can either, because meetings in the evenings are not uncommon, they happen. We can either arrange for the opening of a facility that does have the equipment, or arrange for the equipment to come to one of our facilities that we will open up for the meeting. So again, as I put in chat, staff will have that responsibility of making sure live streaming can happen for your meeting.
Could I ask another question? If all the members of the commission are involved in a project, say we're going to talk about Jackson Street, and everybody is involved in that, the whole commission, then the quorum would be the 6+. And if only 5 people meet to talk about Jackson Street, there wouldn't be a quorum, correct?
Right, unless you have some subcommittee that's part of that 5 that meet.
But if we have projects and it's open to all 11 members to discuss, depending on availability, interest, blah, 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 then it would be 6 or more.
I think it gets hard because you all do have those task force or those other subcommittees. If the 5 people that are meeting about the Jackson Street, even if that's an entire ACAC thing, it's part of ACAC. So if a subcommittee meets and there's a quorum of that subcommittee, if they're discussing even that larger ACAC topic, that is subject to the Open Meetings Act.
But
can't get around the Open Meetings Act by just meeting in smaller groups. And
well, I mean, everybody is involved in the Jackson Street project. We've all been engaged on it, and anytime we want to have a separate meeting on Jackson Street and everyone can participate in it, then it becomes a quorum of 6 or more.
But you couldn't make any decisions without a quorum. If you
Right. Well, no, but none of our task forces or we have never had task forces other than outreach and maybe arts and community. We've not done that before. This is the first time that we've started thinking about having, a range of task forces that we can divide into, but we haven't normally done this in the past. This is a new thing, so I'm trying to understand whether it's even worth trying to do this new thing. I mean, it may not be worth for us to have these, assignments. Perhaps it would be better if we were all involved in the projects that we all want to pursue. I mean, we all want to be involved in Mural Fest. We all want to be involved in bike racks. And, if we decide we're going to do a meeting 2 weeks from now to talk about Mural Fest, anybody can come that's interested. If we have 5 people that show up that are interested in doing that, then it's not going to become a quorum.
I think what I'm hearing Lisa say is that the entire structure of how ACAC does meetings has to change. And so unfortunately, it's not going to be able to be the way it has been done in the past, that it has to change. And that's going to take some rethinking and retooling on our part. And we have to be flexible in order to meet, this new normal. That's what I'm hearing. And so when you say that everybody's interested in this, but there's no quorum, you have to make sure that if you're having a meeting, that there has to be a quorum. If not, we can't have the meeting. And so that's going to be very difficult, particularly if we're not scheduling things far enough out in advance, or if something happens, etc. So the entire way, from what I'm hearing, it seems that the entire way that ACAC does business, quote unquote, has to change and be more structured.
Maybe.
And unfortunately, it's about 1 minute before I have to go. If you all want to kind of get like a list of questions together that I didn't answer, and either Stephanie or Tatiana can email those to me, I'll be happy to get you all answers to those. I think what I'll leave you with is basically, you have to think of yourself as an extension or an arm of the Athens-Clarke County government. So everything that the Athens-Clarke County government is subject to, you as a group are subject to. Unfortunately, being a government entity makes things a lot harder. There's just more that you have to do. You have to be more transparent. If this were, if you all were a nonprofit or a 501c3, things could really be totally different. But being an arm and extension of the government requires you to meet certain expectations and be transparent about those expectations. So, asking, can we just only meet with these people and not make a quorum and then not have to notice it? I would advise against that, because I think what that does is sends a message that you are attempting to skirt the Open Meetings Act and try to keep the public out of the knowledge of what ACAC is doing. And so I would advise against that. But again, if you have specific questions, I hate that I have to leave early. I apologize for that. But I'll be happy to answer those questions and get back to you. All right. I hope you all have a good rest of your evening, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye.
Thank you, Lisa.
So yeah, a lot to chew on, and I mean, logistically, I just don't even know how this is going to work, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. Let's see, treasurer's report. Darcy, you and I need to connect before our August meeting, but we'll defer having an interactive activity on our budget. We'll defer that to our in-person meeting in August. Projects reports.
Sure. So many of you have seen we have 2 live calls for art, mural calls for the Greenway. So that's very exciting. We haven't had mural calls in a really long time. They're already getting a lot of attention. A lot of folks are emailing with questions or to sign up for our site visits. I'm doing 2 site visits for each site the week of July 18th on Wednesday and Saturday. I'm having people sort of pre-register with me just in case I need to change those for weather reasons. And then the week of July 25th, I have some virtual info sessions planned as well for those who aren't local, to answer any questions about contracts, insurance, all of those things. And I will have some of my fellow staff members available for both the in-person site visits and the info sessions for those sites. So that is Greenway. That call is going to be open until August 28th closes. Both the calls close on August 28th. So we have a few weeks. Be sure to spread the word. I've already posted them on publicartist.org, Americans for the Arts, CodaWorks. They've gone on our listserv. Social media. I've sent them to some regional colleagues in the public art world. But if any of you have any listservs for public art or for artists commissions that you think I should share those calls to, just let me know. And they are national calls, so they are open to anyone in the United States. Firefly 2, we have 2 sites going for mayor and commission approval beginning of August. So that agenda item is with the clerk's office and all ready to go. Hopefully those will get approved. Once approved, we'll start working on the calls for Firefly. Those will be 2 calls. And the arena, I met with Paul Kramer and John Cimino, who is the project manager for the Classic Center Arena, just to talk about info I need to draft our calls for art, some specs and things like that. We're also having conversations about lighting with the designer, because we need to make sure we have the appropriate lighting on those exterior sites. And that is part of the construction plan. We're also having some ongoing conversations about the material for the exterior mural, if that's going to be panels that are attached, or basically the material that is on the rest of the building isn't something that can be painted like a mural. So there needs to be a special substrate or panel or something applied. So we're having those conversations. And obviously, once we have a piece of artwork selected, we'll be able to troubleshoot that a little better. But just good conversations to have on the front end with those. And then let's see, Clayton Street, things are moving forward. We're looking at an August install for Clayton. They're having some construction delays there. So as construction kind of wraps up, that's when our art pieces for Clayton will be able to be installed. So I'll keep everyone updated when we get a little bit closer. We're hoping by the end of August for those. Let's see, what else do I have? So a project that's coming up in the user group phase, there's going to be a user group meeting sometime in August. I don't have a date on that yet, but I'll let everyone know. Will be a user group meeting for Bishop Park. So Bishop Park improvements are moving forward. Basically, phase one of the Bishop Park improvements are the pool area. So that's the schematic that's being discussed in the user group right now. However, art funds for Bishop Park can be used anywhere in the Bishop Park site. It's not just the pool area, but that is the schematic that's being discussed at this phase of construction. So that's that. Music Walk of Fame. Of course, we had our big announcement during AthFest. Lots of excitement. We've been getting a lot of press. And the plaques have been ordered. They're going to be heading our way sometime in August. So those will be another August install for us. I'll let everyone know our idea for install, but what typically happens is we get a shipping notification. They go to our streets and drainage division warehouse, where our streets and drainage team weld little rebar pieces to the back of the plaques, and then they can schedule the concrete truck, usually about a week out, and get those all installed in the morning. And they stay wrapped in plastic while the concrete sets up for a while, and then they get all cleaned up and pretty. So hopefully by the end of August, those will be all installed. And I have an updated map for that's ready to go when they are installed. So that is, yes.
Titus had asked if we were doing any kind of event for the artist.
Great question. We don't have anything scheduled as of yet, but especially if he wants to come participate in something, we would really love to have him. So
if Titus wants to come, the Morton Theater Corporation would be probably more than thrilled to plan something.
That's true facts. That's true facts.
What should I tell him? Like, just if you want, like, if you build it, they will come.
Yes, basically.
Well, ask him his schedule. When you said the
Okay.
unveiling should be the end of August.
So yeah, they'll be installed by the end of August. Once I get a shipping notification, I'll know for sure, but should be sometime in August. So yeah, if he's open to it, we could definitely talk about an event. I know some of our other recipients would really love to participate as well. We haven't really done an event since we rolled this project out, so it'd be wonderful to have some sort of celebration at the Morton would be great. So
if it's going to be at the Morton, it would have to be sometime in September, because we need time to plan things out. But I can say for sure certain even though I'm not president anymore, that's something we'd be interested in.
Yeah. Let's definitely discuss that more, maybe with outreach team, Madeline.
We'll likely also need to discuss this really with the mayor's committee because that's who ultimately makes the selections. And so I think the idea would be to have something that acknowledged all of the people on the, or at least an opportunity to do that. So that would have to come in collaboration as well with like the mayor's office.
Yeah. And that's everyone, right? All, because we haven't had any, the first one unveiling happened during the pandemic, so we didn't have anything. And so it'll be amazing.
Yeah, we did
like
a very soft virtual for the very first ones. The mayor did something that was all virtual, and we have done very tiny things since, but no formal ribbon cutting of any kind. So I think it will be a much larger scale kind of operation in order to like acknowledge the work on both this commission as well as the mayor's committee. So I think that would be a deeper conversation and a time, like what time we would have that, what time of year we would have that.
Absolutely. But I think it's a great idea.
So yeah. And of course, Titus would be invited. Absolutely. We just need to plan it when it's maybe not football season. That's the other thing, but we'll see how that plays out.
Like a Walk of Fame celebration or something, and not tied necessarily to the unveiling.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and also Ellie's on the call. Ellie, I sent out Ellie's full maintenance report. She did a really wonderful job. She did a really deep dive, into some of these topics. One of the things that I had her look into as well, because we've been having a lot of ongoing discussions with it, is plaques and markers and how those are maintained. What do they use? How do they set those up? What she found was that there's really not an industry standard for those kind of things. Everyone is kind of doing some different things. Everyone's playing catch up. And something that has really been coming up, at least with our projects that do have plaques, is that we're replacing them a lot. They get taken a lot and we have to replace them a lot. So part of that discussion too is that, unfortunately, I wish you could just be like, oh, we do that big investment in all these plaques and then we're done. But what it's looking like is that's going to be sort of an ongoing operational cost. So we need to be thinking about what we're willing to spend each year, or like what our thresholds are going to be on replacing those things. Obviously, if they go missing every week, we're not going to replace them every week, but kind of coming up with a sort of an operational budget for replacing them, because that I think would have to come out of our operational budget and not the capital budget. Madeline?
Yeah, I have a question. So I have not had a chance to review Ellie's report yet. I'm so sorry. Everybody says
it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
Everyone says it's amazing, so I'm really looking forward to it. But can the plaque issue, can it just be solved by like a design solution? Like, can we just look at a different sort of design? Like, even if it is a higher cost, that we could make it come from the operational budget, like not the operational budget, the other one, the capital budget. Yeah. So something made, just like for sake of example, something like the Athens Music Walk of Fame plaques that are in the ground and not able to be like peeled off or something. So that could be an option instead of an option, like an alternative to like, well, let's make something smaller and might more likely to be replaced.
Yeah, definitely the cost and the quality of the signs is a big differential in how likely they are to be taken. And yeah, something like the way the plaques are put in the ground, you can't pry them up because they have those pieces of rebar. Most of our placards are put on with like an epoxy after, on the concrete pad or against the wall, and it's very easy to pry them up. We have some that are bolted or screwed. Those often end up getting pried up as well. So it really either has to be something that's embedded, or I'm wondering if we do something that's maybe even painted or stenciled, or like some sort of like a heat press decal or something that can be applied. I wonder if that would be hard to remove. So I need to explore some more options, but things are moving. Things are the wheels are turning with that. But yeah, so That's something that I've just been thinking about since Ellie has turned in her final report. So I need to get some specs and some quotes on what those options would look like. So
And
ongoing
let's not
conversation.
forget that maybe we could have a virtual plaques on a,
Like just something that you scan and that's like a QR code. And you
well,
just
right,
scan.
but or that we just have a on the website, our website, we have these things identified and that you can look it up whether there's a plaque there or not.
Right. I mean, we do want to have some, I mean, it really is good to have something, physical
I mean,
to,
in addition to the physical.
yeah. But I'm with you, Donna. I think we can definitely explore some options there. And let's see, is that? I think that's what I have for projects.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Arts and Community Awards, let's see, are all the reports in, or are we still waiting for?
Yes,
Okay,
all those 4. So the ones I put in that folder are the 4 from the fall 2021 and spring, this most recent run. So just those 4, and they're all in. All the projects are done. All the reports are in. So that's all complete on that end.
Thank you. Let's see, we need to get a fall cycle going. We know that since this is coming out of, we just learned last month, the why. So since this is coming out of our operating budget, it has to be, the projects have to be completed. Projects that we fund from Arts and Community Awards have to be completed in the same fiscal year. So let's roll. There's really no time. If that's our constraint, there is really no reason to drag our feet here.
We have some legal questions that we need to get resolved. So
That would be a big one.
Friday's meeting, yeah.
So-
So including like, I know Stephanie, you have the good list, but like, can things be on private property? Can they only be experiential or performance based, or can we do a mural or something, a physical object? And so there's a bunch of questions like that. So we really can't move forward until those are resolved, unless we want to just, I guess, what we did with the previous round was just, okay, well, let's just take the question of object ownership out, and that's why we did the performance theme. But so I think that Lisa wants to set a meeting with definitely Stephanie and Tatiana, and I'm guessing it's open possibly to commissioners just for learning and asking more questions.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
a good start would be like the questions, like I have a list of those questions, just like you just went over, and we have even more, I mean, about insurance for performance or licensing, all of that.
So does it, licensing for performance. Okay. So is there a way to move forward right now, or do we need to try to have that meeting maybe this month, and then
Yeah, I mean,
we can make our timeline as a part of, baby steps towards making feasible annual work plan, while maybe that meeting is scheduled or being prepped for. We could also be making a timeline of like, let's try to just sketch out like what needs to be done, so that because there is so much to do, and it's going to take, I think Tatiana, you gave advice, it's going to take probably 4 months just for processing, because, is that right?
If we're doing contracts and we have to go through work, because we're talking about having all the projects approved by mayor and commission, so there'll need to be an agenda item drafted, and then they'll have to go for mayor and commission approval. And then obviously all the usual finance paperwork and everything like that. So it's going to be a considerably longer process moving forward.
So I can send out a poll to whoever you want to join this meeting with, the attorney's office, and we can come prepared with the list of all the questions that we need to answer. We can send that in advance. That will help, I think, the lawyers see all of the ways in which people would want funding to make art for the community. So like I said, performance, is it on private property, public property, all of these things. And then I think there's two parts to this meeting. One is all of the questions about the kind of art that an art and community award can actually fund. And the second question is, Tatiana and I have worked up what a new timeline, like a checklist of first this happens, then this happens, so that we can see what that would look like. And they'll need to make sure that all of those steps are correct. So Tatiana and I have already worked on that. I can edit it and share it. So we can prepare those documents in advance, agree on them, set that in advance to the lawyers, and then have the meeting so that we can see where we're at with art and community awards.
Let me jump in real quick too and add that even the attorney's office is trying to do some research to make a decision about how the public and private partnership would work in this incident if we were going to be doing any artwork on private property. What does that look like and what do we have to go through to make it happen? So I agree, we need to set up a meeting with them very soon. Hopefully it'll encourage them to wrap up some of their research before that meeting happens, because that, as we all identified, that's a crucial step in this process.
We
But
go
if we
ahead
want to
with-
get, I think at this point, the soonest we can get on the mayor and commission's voting cycle would be their first Tuesday in September, which means we've got to have an agenda item drafted very early in August, because they have in their August agenda setting, they would review the agenda item and then they'd vote on it in September. And then we'd be prepared to make the call to artist after that. So we'll try to set that meeting up really soon.
So Kim, what requires mayor commission approval at this stage?
Well, since you're going to be having these mini grants, these $5,000 grants are called artist, we'll have to go forward with them for approval for that.
Before we issue the call?
Before that's, I'll get clarity on that with commissioners. Stephanie, did you understand it would need to be before?
I thought that they
Or
would.
we could make the call and then do it.
Well, I think we need to make sure that the attorney's office thinks that we can make the call and what's included in the call, and that because what's included in the call is what's included in the contract. And then we make the call, people respond to it, selections are made. Let's say you selected 5 recipients, then we would prepare an agenda item. We would submit each individual 5 items, and then the mayor and commission would thumbs up, thumbs down, ask questions, decide if those 5 recipients would receive those 5 awards. Then the paperwork would start. We'd notify the recipients, and then we'd go through the whole thing where we send all the paperwork out, bring it all back, send it to the mayor's office. It gets signed and it goes to the finance, checks get,
Okay.
We're off.
So when we did the 50 grants that first time that kind of launched this, that was because it was ARPA funding and they voted on the funds for that purpose. Okay, then I'll stand corrected then. Okay.
That's because
Clarify.
the mayor and commission decided to add money to it from a different source. They were already going to do the AICA awards with their existing $15,000. So yes, that's where the vote came from.
Good. And I'm glad we clarified that, and thank you.
So since it's sounding like arts and community awards will have months of lag time, you know, we do need to be asking questions. Like, does it make sense to have 2 cycles during the year, or just have one as early as we can get it in the fiscal year? I think Darcy, you helped us decide last month that we could probably comfortably spend or comfortably award 5 $5,000 awards totaling 25,000, and that might be it for the year, and then we spend the rest of our operating budget on our website and some other stuff. Does that sound like a way forward?
Yes. Is that something we need to vote on, and or do we need to right now, or, in the next month, can we establish a formal committee and a committee chair? Because I have kind of just by default been, hey, I'll do it, but I do think we should, if we have to notice these meetings now, let's just commit to the, fiscal year 23, this is Arts and Community Awards Subcommittee, if we want to go that route. Does that sound right to you, Andrew, or what do you think?
It does. I mean, if we're deciding to change how we do things from having one cycle in the fall, one cycle in the spring, to just having one for the year because of all these extra requirements, then yeah, I think we should vote on that.
I don't know that we need to vote on it before we vote on a budget.
Oh,
I mean,
Well, and we could always ask people, I mean, even though it's, you know, we're putting the call out at the same time, we could ask people to do it at different times of the year, so it's actually spread out over the fiscal year. You know what I mean? Like, we could ask, like,
Yeah.
the
We could
first
say
round.
projects between now and the end of the fiscal year. So the projects would be probably throughout.
Yeah. So I mean, I mean, we are essentially doing it, you know, we're still getting art spread across the year.
Right.
It's just a matter of, it just
funding
gives us a little bit extra time.
Spread out throughout the year, except it can't happen after July 30th. So, you know,
June
fiscal
30th.
year.
I'm sorry, June 30th.
Yeah.
So July 1st to whenever we can get these launched, nothing. And then when we get these launched to the end of the fiscal year, you know, 5 things. I don't know. Does it make sense to pace them out if some, since we don't even know if these are all going to be programmatic and events or some combination of smaller scale, tangible works of public art and events. I don't know. I welcome other opinions here.
I think it makes sense to plan just based on what we're hearing of, it's really going to take at least 4 months of processing and for the paperwork. And I wonder, I'm just thinking in real time. I think it just makes sense to bulk, you know, all of this is the Arts and Community Awards for fiscal year 23. Your project can happen anytime between X and Y, just whatever is appropriate. But I do think it makes sense to batch the call, batch all of the processing, to better align with maybe what the staff can do. If y'all already have the timeline for that, then I think that, you know, that just like the budget constraint, that is another obvious constraint. So I think it makes sense. But if you are, and I think, I mean, for me, just knowing that we would batch the awards rather than let's issue a call next month versus, or in addition to issuing a call in January, I think we could go ahead and plan to batch the calls regardless of what the details on the projects will be, like, you know, the questions about performance and property and ownership and things like that. I think I would like to, you know, go ahead and vote on batching or not, just so we can be settled on the timeline, and then just kind of table the discussion on, you know, the breakdown of those projects just until we get further information from the city attorney's office after that meeting.
I'm confused what you mean by batching.
Rather than doing one call for 3 in the fall and here's another call for 2 in the spring, batch it together in July or, you know, not necessarily July, but like we would batch it.
You mean all at once, all 5 concurrently?
That's what I mean, yeah.
Okay, I got you.
I think the projects are going to naturally have different timelines and roll out at different times. It would be unusual for all of them to come out at once, no matter what it is. And plus, I think this would be a learning year for, you know, doing it in this way, and we can reevaluate next year.
so can I make a motion that we do all AICA calls as early as possible for FY 23 all at the same time?
A second.
Can we amend, I'm sorry, I'm probably going out of Robert's rules, but I wonder if we could also state that it would be 5 grants at 5,000 each as part of that motion.
Yeah, I second the amendment.
Okay, second. Wait a minute. Madeline, Helen, and Andrew. Okay.
Okay, all in
Well,
favor?
now, yeah, discussion. Is there any
Yeah,
further
yes.
Now vote.
Okay, all in favor of for this fiscal year, we will do what Donna said with Helen's amendment. All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Any opposed? Okay, none opposed. So that passes.
Okay.
Okay, so can we get this meeting scheduled as soon as possible? Because that's yet another hurdle to clear, adding to our lag time.
I think Stephanie said she would send out a doodle poll to try to get that scheduled.
Okay.
I can send the doodle poll to the attorneys and then to whom else?
Yeah, do we need to define that subcommittee now, Andrew, or?
Is it a subcommittee or is it a meeting? That I don't know. I don't know anymore.
You're meeting with staff, so it doesn't have to be an open public
Okay.
meeting. So just who you want to be included in this meeting with the lawyers, and like you can work up the list among all of you if you want to do like a communal Google Doc to come up with all your questions. But just like who would you like to include in this meeting with the attorney's office? Tatiana and I will be present.
But
Yeah, we can get our own doodle poll going and let people self-select.
Okay,
Yeah.
then you can just let me know who you would like to add, and I'll ask the attorneys their availability if I need to do a doodle poll or what people's
Well,
availability.
if the poll goes to everybody, then everybody has the opportunity to self-select.
Okay.
Why don't we do it
But
that way?
as I understood the meeting Friday, we can't have a quorum
That's
of
true, sir.
members. Even though we're meeting with staff, we can't have a quorum of members.
Unless you give notice and all the other things that meet the open records, notice, minutes, agenda, open to the public.
Okay, so 5 people self-select.
I would be happy to go and report back. And if anybody else wants to join, that's great.
There'll be a Google Doc shared that we can add questions to. Yep. Y'all are saying?
Y'all want
I'll
to
send-
create one? Yeah.
I'll send it out.
Okay.
Even there we
Thank you.
go.
So we're talking about two different documents too, because I told Lisa I would collect any general questions she has about y'all have about open records and things like that, so we can create one for that and maybe one for arts and community awards.
Oh, I see. We can make it 2, or we could just make it 1 and just
Or
put it like a category. Here's general. Hey, here's all the arts and community awards.
That works too.
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to send that out after the meeting. If you like.
Thank you. Okay, is that it for arts and community awards? Okay. So yeah, old business. Tatiana, thanks for covering, giving us an update on the plaques and whatnot. Anything else to add there? Any other comments for discussion from the group?
We'll just have to have some budget conversation maybe next month. And I'll have
Okay.
a little more info with options.
Okay, so you could share like examples and what that might cost, and then we can discuss the budget implications from there.
Mhm.
Okay, great. That'd be a nice thread to pick back up in August. Okay, outreach team. Before I hand it over to Madeline, let me just say kudos to Madeline and her team or the outreach team for putting together our first tabling event in quite some time. It was really nice to have a craft. It was nice to interact with the public. Our mural maps flew off the shelves. That was a really popular item, which really speaks to the community's wants for murals. And in this case, there were murals that have been made, and it's not even a current map. But even still, the public was learning about new murals that they might not have laid eyes on in person yet. That was a big hit. Montu crushed it on stage. It was great to have that discussion entwined with Athfest. So thanks to the staff for coordinating that with Athfest. And lastly, the fan. It was so cool to have a guitar pick music walk of fame plaque shaped fan, and to see those dispersed throughout the crowd on Saturday. So kudos to all of that. Madeline, I'll hand it to you for any other outreach related things.
Thanks. And thanks. I don't remember who it was, but somebody on the call in, I don't know if it was June or if it was in May, because we've been talking about the access tabling thing provisionally for a while, but it was not my idea to make the fan in the shape of the pick, and that was just really fun. So, but yeah, we just DIY'd it. Thank you to everybody who got hand cramps helping me cut out 100 of those individually, and who had coffee with me while we did it. So thank you. We did not meet in June or in July, which is great because it wasn't noticed. So no harm, no foul. And we will notice it next month. And just want to shout out to Kimberly and Jesus. Thanks for joining. So that brings our committee up to, I think, 5 full people, which is great. And Serena will be back in town. She's on her month-long excursion in Europe this month, so that's why she's not here, but she's on that committee. So yeah, we'll just get everybody back together and meet next month. Ongoing opportunities to contribute ideas in our Google Drive under the outreach folder, which is under the team folder, I believe. Yeah, team notes. There are some kind of just open ideation docs if you want to contribute ideas for what places, events, etc., where we could potentially be tabling. That'll be a great list to just kind of pull from. The big flashy obvious one is AthFest, but we would love to get, we've set our goal, provisional goal at least, of having a tabling event a month. Could be at a farmer's market, could just be in College Square, but it'd be great to work with everybody and with Tatiana to help identify where we can reach public. So we have that ongoing list, and then we're still in our sort of team strategic planning phase. So open invitation for the whole committee, as well as anybody who would like to contribute thoughts, to go onto the Google Drive and contribute drafts or make comments on what we've worked on so far, which we have presented previously, related to our, at least for the fiscal year, this fiscal year, what our outreach team focus areas could be and how we could bring those goals to life. That's pretty much it, kind of just continuing slow and steady what we have been doing. And work plan for 2025. I need, Stephanie, did you mean work plan for this related to outreach? Work plan for fiscal year 23? Perfect. Yep. Yes. Yep. We will do that. Right. Yeah. This year, yeah, we got the note from Jill, director of AthFest. Would love to register for a formal booth space. It just was not available to us on the only date that we could get volunteers there this year. So that is the last I have for outreach. Is there any questions or discussion?
Great, thanks again. So strategy team, we also didn't meet in July. I had a death of a close friend with the memorial when we were supposed to meet, and I bring that up because Tom was somebody that I brought in to complete Rainbow Forest on painting day. He was the painter that executed, we could say, kind of led the subcontracting of that part of things when things were hectic and things were down to the wire. That said, strategy team, let's see, we talked, I mentioned a work plan as the county's mechanism for a work plan, but also a mutual understanding of what the course of action would be for, I guess, it's a year. I haven't seen an example of that yet. Does it make sense that live with the strategy team? Because that kind of aligns with something we discussed last month for the strategy team, to be the ones to dig into a 5-year work plan. We might have even called it that. So it kind of makes sense to, once we have a better understanding of the work plan document, kind of makes sense to do those concurrently at the strategy team level, but I welcome feedback.
just a starting point for the work plan could be all the committees, subcommittees, there, and like a timeline for the year so that we can start to look at how meetings will start to inform the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't think we're quite there with knowing which task forces make sense to meet on an ongoing basis in the immediate and longer term. You know, does it make sense to, for example, have our, you know, if we're not thinking about monuments for a few more years, then we probably, so that's probably a few months out, that specific thing. But yes, we'll make that part of our work, and I'll write that down. Anything else from the strategy team or about it? I mean, the tricky thing is, I'll jump to the next portion of our meeting. The tricky thing is, you know, task forces aren't defined monolithically. There's not going to be a single definition of a task force that's going to make sense for all task forces. You know, are they all going to meet monthly? Probably not. Are they all going to meet bi-monthly, every 3 months? That'll vary. What we can't do for now per our ordinance is bring other people in. So that was kind of the intent of a task force. It seems like that could be remedied with an amendment to our ordinance. It might be premature to rush to that amendment to our ordinance if we're also revamping our bylaws. Then again, do we wait indefinitely to decide to update our ordinance so that we can bring other people in? I don't know. Madeline?
Well, just a process question on bylaws and ordinance. Because I believe Lisa said we can draft an amendment, but it would of course have to go before the mayor and commission, which would take a few months to be reviewed, approved or not. Does the same go for our bylaws, or do you know if we want to, is the same really?
Our bylaws say that we can do that ourselves by majority vote.
But the lawyers will have to compare it to the ordinance, so it'll have to be
Make sure it's
reviewed.
not conflicting. Yeah, so we can essentially, just not conflict it, because I recall that ordinance saying we can set internal guidelines, policies, et cetera, which to me is bylaws, for the functioning of the group. So yeah, we would just work with the city attorney's office for that. I had a question I posted in the chat, but would it make sense? I don't know, it's just an idea, but would it make sense to set let's just say a couple of big monthly exploratory task forces for these 6 groups that we're talking about? Since they're all supposed to be in the exploratory phase, I don't think everybody really knows what they're supposed to be looking for, coming up with. It might make sense to have a couple of, to get something on the calendar that we can notice and get Tatiana at, and just have a little bit more of a controllable workflow if we have maybe just a larger group meeting where we can figure out here's what everybody should be pulling, and then reporting out in that same way at that level. Maybe some kind of collaborative setting like that might help to move forward a little faster. I don't know.
I like that idea because I'm just slammed with all of the cascading effects of everything we've learned today and Friday. I just don't know what it looks like, and I think that's great. I'm over my skis here. It, you know, it's death by a thousand cuts with all of these new rules and requirements for kind of everything we do. So yeah, I would welcome that.
I think it would really help to just get get everybody on the same page about what we even need to be looking at, looking up. And I think when we can come together with those shared sort of expectations, and then report out at the next meeting after we do some fact finding or something, that will probably help us to shake out what is a realistic, accomplishable goal for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, so we can set some energy priorities and potentially provisional funding priorities that way.
I wonder if we could have like a lead person for each task force that would do some of the kind of fact-finding part of it, and then report to the whole group some strategic thoughts around each topic.
Yeah.
Just
it-
throwing that out as a possibility so that a lead person could, kind of talk to individuals without making it a big formal meeting, since we're just really only doing fact finding at this
I
point.
like that, and I think we might have already done that when with each task force having a designated chair or co-chair.
Mhm.
So I think it could be executed at that level with the chair or co-chair without violating quorum requirements, unless it's
If
a
we've
really
established it
small
as
task
task forces at
force.
all, then those groups cannot meet without it being noticed. So,
Right.
we have designated the task forces, but like my group with Serena, we want to look into artist residencies that are in our master plan. We have not met yet, so no harm, no foul. But just because there's two of us, I mean, that's still a task force meeting. It would be a task force meeting, even though there's just two of us, right? So I don't know if that would work, but I like the idea. Helen, I don't know if you were just saying, oh, for the purpose of now, let's just forget about everybody else who had volunteered to be a part of that group, and let's just have that lead person, just one person at a time.
Just for the purposes of coming up with an outlined strategy, and then we can then determine what kind of timeline, who really needs to be engaged, what all the steps might be involved. And actually, I think that might be more streamlined, just to have one person work that out.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that that person can't talk to somebody, but bounce some ideas off of. But one person takes the lead, does a presentation at our full meeting, so that everybody can hear, what the strategy could be, and then get input from everybody, and then develop these into formalized task forces by vote. Once the group understands what the workload looks like, it's kind of hard to figure out for the whole group to understand whether it's worth pursuing now, later, what's our priority for FY23, FY24, moving forward. I'm just saying that's just an idea, and I'm not trying to push it, and I don't want to insinuate that I'm trying to get around this open meetings.
Yeah.
But I just feel like let's be efficient about the process.
I think that makes sense. If somebody wants to step up and be that person, or if we need a task force, that can be noticed and attended. I don't know, thoughts from what Helen's saying.
I think
Madeline, you're good at organization.
love it. I do. But since the chair is the person who designates the committees, I don't know if that sort of just by default makes you that person who needs to lead that meeting and process.
Okay.
I don't have any experience on one of these task forces, so I would not know what to share with people to say, hey, here's the sort of framework that you should be looking to fill in.
Are we talking about having a separate meeting to talk about task forces? Or I thought we were just talking about the next monthly meeting. To have the chair of each task force report to the next monthly meeting what that group is looking toward.
Yeah, and that might be what Helen meant. I do think that's a little premature, just because I mean, I don't know if anybody has started working on anything. Again, I can speak for myself and my group. We have not started working on anything. I don't know what would be helpful to present. So I kind of think it would be helpful to have at least a meeting. Sorry, I think we'd have to notice it, I guess, of maybe just the task force chairs, and come together and say, okay, here's what we have done. Oh, I see. I can do that too, or something like that, to help prepare us to present out at the next meeting. Maybe I'm alone in feeling that way.
This could be maybe done by email. I think we're overthinking this, getting in the weeds a little bit. Let's make something simpler today.
Do digital communications have to be, are they part of this thing? The
No.
Communications Act?
No,
They're subject to open records, yes. So
Yeah, and there's an exception for things in email, but I think it is related to the Open Meetings Act. So we shouldn't be like voting or anything through email, but
I also would encourage everyone to use a separate email that's not your personal email for anything having to do with ACAC. Because any of your personal email, if you use it for the function of ACAC, is subject to open records.
That's correct, Kimberly. And my understanding is that all the BAC members will be issued an accgov.com email soon. I don't know when that's happening. So if any of you want to go ahead and make a separate email and you want to use that email for the Google group or for any correspondence, just let me know. But then when those new emails roll out, we'll update everyone.
So I have been an organizer of task force and tasks past that word in the past. So I would be glad to put together a document that can sort of help lead people to start that email or Google group conversation to help provide some structure for whatever task force is we're going to be putting forward
thank
as
you.
sort of
I
a
will
first step.
accept that as a first step
Yeah.
with gratitude.
Kimberly, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because yeah, the only task force I've really attended was the one on Friday morning. So that'd be great. Thank you.
But yeah, this is a lot, and it's going to be a big change, I think. So
It's a
I think
huge change.
tread carefully.
You know, we'll do our best, and I trust everybody to do their best. It's going to be an adjustment. You know, a couple things. All meetings have to be held in person and held in person with notes taken, right? That's between now and October, and then in October we have the live streaming component, and that's when things get really complex because that limits really where and when we can meet. To have the capability for live streaming, I definitely noted that we could ask the manager's office for exceptions to that. I will definitely be working on that between now and October. You know, I think a fair compromise is our minutes. What I would, you know, what's on the top of my head is if we're both taking minutes, um, having a quorum of each committee, meeting in person, and doing readouts on what the task forces that meet that month discussed at our monthly meetings, they might be amenable to that compromise. I see Helen with the finger up.
Well, I mean, I think as a group, we just need to figure out how many task forces we need to have officially on
Yeah.
our agenda. I don't think that what we discussed in our outreach or in our retreat. I mean, those are all wonderful ideas. We'd all love to jump and run with all of those things, but I think that given what we're learning in recent days, that maybe we need to be more strategic about which task forces we have alive and running each fiscal year. So that's why I'm saying if we have sort of a basic understanding of what each one of those 8 projects entail, which ones make the most sense for this fiscal year and which ones make sense in future years in the 5-year plan, so that we can, use our time efficiently and wisely and not overburden the staff that's trying to support us. And, we just need to be, I don't think we can have 8 task forces running concurrently every month.
I agree. And that was never the intent. So, the intent was to get the task forces established now. They'll meet amongst themselves, and then that will help us prioritize, okay, which task forces should be more immediate, meeting years 1 and 2, and which task forces are more of a year 5 thing. So I think we're working there, but I think it would be premature to not at least have a couple preliminary meetings at the task force level for all of those that we proposed at our retreat. But I welcome feedback there. Because yeah, I mean, we all put a sticker, we signed up for 2 task forces, 3 in a couple cases. You know, at our task force meeting, actually our last strategy, some meeting, I don't know which, some meeting I had recently, we even discussed like, you know, it's kind of nice to keep virtually because that helps reduce the burden of, you know, a commute and waiting for a meeting to start. And if we're going to be involved in many concurrent things, maybe it makes sense to meet virtually. Now we know that that's not an option. So yes, for our own well-being, for our own bandwidth, we're going to be more tactical about task forces. I just don't think we're there yet. We can, let's meet a few times, and then, you know, maybe even discuss at the task force level. Well, and then set priorities as a group.
Could we just like, can we designate people to be expert in certain areas? So then they could come, I think that's kind of what you guys were saying earlier is like, so then you come back to the whole group and, you know, maybe it's like, you know, bike rack. So, you know, we kind of use like you and Mickey as like the expert there. And so then, you know, you're our go-to person for questions or,
Point
so
person.
instead of like task force, it's like just experts.
The point person.
Yeah. Or does that defeat the purpose? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, and I think that point person can come up with a real basic understanding of, or basic outline to present to the whole group of what is involved in that effort.
And Kimberly's going to give us a template to do that.
Yeah, right. And it doesn't mean that you can't pick up the phone and ask Tatiana a question or ask Mickey, you know, what do you think about this? I mean, I think we can talk to each other without having calling it a meeting.
Sure. I don't know anymore.
Okay, cool. Before we designate a task force, why don't we just change topics altogether? Great. So that's really it for the agenda other than upcoming events. So we have the Linden House Art Summit, August 5th and 6th. Do y'all want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, it's at the Morton Theater this time. It's not at the Linden House. We are going to have Charmaine Minifield as our keynote speaker at the Morton. Stephanie, do you know a little more about that, or?
It's Friday, August 5th, and that's free and open to the public. Anyone can attend that, and we're looking forward to having Charmaine here to talk about her work. She's a really active and prolific artist who really works in a variety of mediums. She will be here to talk about her work and just like her role in the contemporary arts. And then the following day we will have the summit, and the summit does require pre-registration. It's free, but we have the registration open. That will be also held at the Morton. We've had to scale that down a little bit, but it will run concurrently, and that will have cover topics from funding in the arts to legal issues in the arts. And then Tatiana will be presenting about the public art process, like applying for calls and understanding like all of the things that go into that. And I'll be presenting about just the landscape of resources and working as a contemporary artist in Athens. And there'll be lots of like social networking opportunities, both in the morning and in the afternoon. So that will be the following day. It's Saturday at the Morton. So we have all the marketing for that, I think today finalized. So we'll be rolling, you'll see a lot of that coming out on our social media, and a QR code for the registration, with which we're doing through Eventbrite. It's now going to be at the Morton Theater. We had to make changes based on the resources that we have available right now in the arts division and in the county generally.
Okay, any other arts happenings from your own universes?
Edie?
All of our shows are now open. If you haven't come and seen them yet, the summer one is really great. Picture This, highlighting contemporary art in Georgia, is 11 art painters working in narrative imagery or in center galleries. Jason Matherly is in the atrium glass cases. We just opened up Margot Newmark Rosenbaum, a photo show from her new book, Drawing from Light, and then a painting show as well. There's a quilt show by Cassie Fussell and Coulter Fussell having to do with mapping, and a paper show, Works on Paper, with Pigment by Robert Croker, is in the West Gallery. Margot will be talking on third Thursday, and we're going to have a small reception for her this month.
Anyone else? Okay, we will see you in person for our August meeting. And we will be noticing things if we need each other before then.
So Monday at the Linden House at 6 o'clock in the community room, is that confirmed?
Yes, so we'll be,
Okay.
let's see, what's the second Monday? Hold on. Where's my calendar? That would be the 8th.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'll put it in the calendar.
Okay, thanks y'all. Have a good night.
Thanks.